Overnight, Iranian retaliatory strikes hit the United Arab Emirates.
And it's regarding what's going on in Dubai. So there's players that are stuck in Dubai. One of those is Daniil Medvedev.
Dubai is on fire. Iranian retaliatory strikes have shut down UAE airspace entirely, grounding over 40 ATP players, coaches, and officials inside a hotel that has literally been converted into a bunker. Extra beds on the floor. One room kept empty in case attacks escalate further.
Right now, from what we understand, they closed the airspace, but it's still a scary situation.
This is happening right now, hours before Indian Wells 2026 begins. Medvedev, Rublev, and Kachanov are trapped. The ATP held an emergency meeting Sunday night. Exit options offered: a 6-hour road drive to Oman or a 10-hour border crossing to Riyadh were rejected. The tour's own head of security told everyone to stay put. The travel shutdown gripping Indian Wells has finally pushed the coaching community to demand answers, because the chaos surrounding this crisis directly affects the environment in which Alcaraz versus Lehecka will be contested. When geopolitical warfare disrupts the preparation of everyone surrounding this matchup, accountability cannot wait. The coaching community is done waiting. Subscribe before this story gets buried under match previews and PR statements. The answers being demanded will change how the ATP handles crises like this forever. Let's start with the context that makes this entire situation explode beyond a standard sports story. The 2026 BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells, the first ATP Masters 1000 of the season, runs from March 4th to March 15th at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden in California. It is the biggest hardcourt event outside the Grand Slams, worth 1,000 ranking points to the winner, and carrying a total prize pool of $9,415,725. The tournament director is Tommy Haas. For any player serious about the world rankings in 2026, this fortnight in the California desert is non-negotiable. Following the conclusion of the Dubai ATP 500 on Saturday, February 28th, a joint U.S. and Israeli military operation against Iran triggered retaliatory Iranian strikes across the Middle East. The UAE, specifically Dubai and Abu Dhabi, became a direct target zone. Both major airports experienced a complete halt of outbound flights. Not delays, not cancellations on select routes, a full shutdown. More than 40 ATP players, coaches, officials, and support staff found themselves grounded inside Dubai hotels with no viable exit. The ATP confirmed the situation publicly, stating its priority was the health and safety of all personnel still in the UAE. The governing body convened an emergency meeting on Sunday night to assess options for getting its people out and across to California in time for the main draw. 2 road exits were identified. Option 1, a 6-hour drive to Oman, whose airport had also been closed. Option 2, a 10-hour road crossing through multiple border checkpoints into Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where flights were operating at limited capacity. Both routes carried significant uncertainty and physical risk. After the ATP's own head of security assessed the situation, the recommendation was unambiguous: stay in the hotel. Don't move. Extra beds were placed on floors inside the hotel. One room was kept deliberately vacant as a contingency space in case the situation escalated further. That detail alone tells you everything about how serious this travel shutdown became. Among those confirmed stranded were Daniil Medvedev, who had just won the Dubai title by default after his finalist Talon Griekspoor withdrew due to a hamstring injury. Andrei Rublev and Karen Kachanov were also stuck. Griekspoor himself had already withdrawn from Indian Wells entirely due to his injury. By the time the Indian Wells qualifying rounds began on March 1st, over 11 players had already confirmed withdrawals from the main draw. And then there was the coaching staff. Because the players weren't traveling alone, when Alcaraz arrived at the 2026 Australian Open in January, he did so without Juan Carlos Ferrero for the first time in 7 years. The split between Alcaraz and Ferrero, one of the most significant coaching breakups in recent tennis history, had been announced in December 2025. According to sources close to Ferrero, the separation came down to contract terms and a fundamental disagreement over travel commitment. Ferrero's position, as reported widely, was that he was unwilling or unable to travel to all of Alcaraz's tournaments under the terms being offered. The players' team wanted full-time travel commitment. Ferrero wanted different conditions. Neither side moved. The partnership ended. Samuel Lopez, who had been part of Alcaraz's coaching setup since late 2024, stepped up as head coach. He guided Alcaraz to the Australian Open title, the completion of the career Grand Slam, and then to the Qatar Open crown in Doha. Alcaraz arrived at Indian Wells 2026 with a 12-0 record on the season, seeded number 1. But the Ferrero situation didn't disappear quietly. It exposed something the ATP coaching community had been watching for years: the unsustainable travel burden placed on support staff at the elite level of the game. A coach following a top 5 player through a full ATP season crosses multiple continents across dozens of weeks. The schedule doesn't adjust for geopolitical crises. It doesn't adjust for airspace closures. It doesn't adjust for wars. The travel shutdown affecting Indian Wells 2026 brought all of that into sharp focus. When coaching teams found themselves trapped inside a Dubai hotel, while their players were scattered across 3 continents trying to get to California, the question of accountability became impossible to ignore. The coaching community finally reached the point of demanding answers. Not about tennis results, not about strategy, but about the fundamental infrastructure the tour relies on to move its people safely around a world that has grown considerably more dangerous. Jiri Lehecka enters Indian Wells 2026 seeded in the lower 20s. He departed Dubai earlier in the tournament after being defeated by Felix Auger Aliassime, which means he was not among those stranded when the airspace shutdown occurred. He arrived in California ahead of the main draw and is preparing for his campaign in the desert. Alcaraz, seeded first, is also already in Indian Wells. He traveled directly from Doha back to Spain before flying out to California well ahead of his debut, which is scheduled for either Friday, March 6th or Saturday, March 7th when the second round begins. Top seeds receiving a first-round bye in this 96-player draw. Their potential meeting matters because of what already happened between them this season. In Doha, at the Qatar Open quarterfinals, Lehecka defeated Alcaraz 6-3, 3-6, 6-4. It was a result that reminded the tennis world that the Czech player, now 25, having just turned a year older, days before this tournament began, and operating with increasing confidence, is capable of taking down the best on a hard court on a given day. He plays aggressive, heavy-hitting tennis that disrupts rhythm. Against Alcaraz specifically, that style has proven it can work. If both players advance through their respective halves of the Indian Wells draw, a meeting in the quarterfinals is entirely realistic. Given Alcaraz's 12-0 start to 2026, completing the career Grand Slam in Melbourne and defending his Qatar title in Doha, the matchup carries genuine weight. Lehecka would arrive at that potential quarterfinal knowing he has already beaten the world number 1 this season. That is not a small thing. The coaching demand for answers is not just about this tournament. The ATP calendar in 2026 begins in Brisbane, moves to the Australian Open in Melbourne, then swings through Doha, and now lands in Indian Wells, all within roughly 8 weeks. After Indian Wells, the Miami Open follows immediately as the second leg of the Sunshine Double. The schedule offers minimal recovery time between hard-court events on opposite sides of the world, and the coaching team's supports. Staff, physios, and training partners are expected to follow every step of it. Alcaraz himself has previously described the ATP schedule as crazy and has publicly urged the tour to address the travel demands placed on players. His own coaching situation, which contributed directly to the Ferrero split according to multiple verified sources, is a concrete example of those demands breaking real professional relationships apart. The Dubai crisis amplified the conversation significantly. When the ATP's response to stranded personnel was to hold an emergency meeting, present 2 impractical road exits, and ultimately recommend that everyone stay sheltered inside a hotel that had been converted into a bunker, the question coaches and their support teams started asking was direct. Who is responsible for this and what happens next time? The Indian Wells 2026 draw itself is stacked with storylines even before the geopolitical chaos. Carlos Alcaraz looks to win the title for the third time, which would place him alongside Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic as the only men to claim 3 consecutive Indian Wells crowns. Djokovic, seeded third, is chasing a record 6th title at the event. Jack Draper is the defending champion, having beaten Holger Rune 6-2, 6-2 in the 2025 final, and arrives under genuine pressure after an injury-disrupted end to last season. Jannik Sinner, seeded second, returns to Indian Wells for the first time since his 2025 suspension. The Italian has yet to win this title and arrives after a season start that hasn't matched the dominance he showed across 2024. His quarterfinal exit in Doha to Jakub Mensik was unexpected for many watching. Lehecka, sitting in the lower 20s of the seedings, enters this tournament with something most of the field doesn't have heading into a potential Alcaraz matchup: a recent win over him on hard courts from this very season. The travel shutdown affecting Indian Wells 2026 didn't just disrupt flights and schedules. It forced a reckoning with a system that the tennis coaching community has been asking to examine for years. The demand for answers, finally, publicly, urgently, is a response to a tournament structure that sends its people into geopolitically volatile regions on a rotating basis, and then finds itself scrambling when the world refuses to cooperate with the draw sheet. Alcaraz versus Lehecka could define the quarterfinal narrative of this tournament. But the conversation that the travel shutdown has triggered in the coaching world could define something much larger: how the ATP protects the people who make these matchups possible in the first place. If this breakdown gave you a different angle on what's actually happening at Indian Wells right now, hit the like button and share this with a tennis fan who needs the full picture. Drop your prediction for Alcaraz versus Lehecka in the comments. Does Lehecka pull off the back-to-back upset in the desert, or does Alcaraz? Answer in California? Subscribe right now for coverage that goes deeper than the scoreline. We will see you in the next one.